The storm reached the stone farm a little after midnight. Wind bent the young trees behind the greenhouse. Lightning flashed across the vegetable field, turning the old barn, the packing shed, and the farmhouse white for a fraction of a second. 16-year-old Aaliyah Stone stood beneath the barn awning in a yellow rain jacket, holding a flashlight in one hand. Above her, several crooked sections of salvaged metal gutter shook beneath the edge of the roof. The first drops struck the tin in scattered taps. Then the rain came hard. Water rushed across the roof, entered the gutter, passed through a wire screen, and poured into the first closed barrel with a deep hollow sound. Aaliyah did not look at the sky. She watched the joints. A thin stream began leaking where two bent sections overlapped. Water ran down the side of the barn instead of reaching the barrel. She pushed a small bucket beneath it, then moved her flashlight toward the second connection. Behind her, Daniel Stone lifted the lid of the family's main utility tank. There was barely enough water inside to cover the bottom. That afternoon, the farm well pump had pulled air twice. If the storm passed too quickly, the family would have to choose what received water in the morning: the greenhouse seedlings, the strawberry rows, or the young vegetables already beginning to set fruit. The first barrel continued filling. Then its sides bulged slightly near the top. Aaliyah looked toward the overflow pipe. Almost nothing was coming out. Leaves had begun collecting against the screen above it. Water rose inside the barrel while more rain hammered the roof. Aaliyah tightened her grip on the flashlight and ran toward the far corner of the barn. 3 weeks earlier, those barrels had been empty. The gutters had been lying behind a closed repair shop, and almost everyone who saw Aaliyah hauling them home believed she was collecting scrap metal. Before we go back to that morning, subscribe if you enjoy stories about ordinary people who notice resources everyone else lets disappear. The Stone family farm stood outside Tarboro in Edgecombe County, North Carolina. It was a small operation with tomatoes, cucumbers, greens, strawberries, and a modest greenhouse where Aaliyah's mother raised vegetable seedlings for spring customers. Nearly everything depended on one shallow well. During a normal season, the well recovered between watering periods. But after weeks of heat and scattered rain, the pump began running longer. Pressure weakened in the hoses, and Daniel started checking the water level every morning. Aaliyah noticed a different problem. Whenever rain finally came, water poured from the barn roof, washed soil away from the foundation, crossed the farmyard, and vanished into a low grassy area. The same family that watched water run away during storms returned to the well the following morning. Behind an old repair shop in town, Aaliyah found a pile of removed gutters. Some were badly rusted. Others were bent or missing their brackets. But several long sections still had solid metal between the damaged ends. She began carrying them home on a small trailer behind the family lawn tractor. Her younger brother Malik watched her unload the first pieces. "You collecting gutters?" he asked, "or building a metal fence around the farm?" Aaliyah ignored the joke. Daniel examined one of the sections and pressed a finger through a rusted hole. "These will leak," he said, "and roof water is not drinking water." "I know," Aaliyah answered. "I only want to collect it for the soil and the greenhouse." Daniel looked toward the well house. "One side of the barn," he said. "Prove it there first." Aaliyah picked up the least damaged gutter and carried it toward the roof. The idea had started during a short summer shower. Aaliyah stood in the greenhouse doorway while water poured from the roof in wide sheets. Within minutes, a muddy pool formed beside the wall. The rain stopped almost as quickly as it began. Later that same afternoon, Daniel turned on the well pump so the family could water the seedlings inside the greenhouse. Aaliyah stood beside the hose and looked back at the wet ground outside. The farm had just received more water than the seedlings needed. It simply had not kept any of it. Before building the system, Aaliyah ran a small test. During the next shower, she placed several empty containers beneath different sections of the barn roof. She wanted to see how quickly water collected from even a narrow area. The containers filled faster than she expected. That did not mean rainwater could replace the well. It only meant the roofs were catching water whether the family used it or not. Aaliyah began sorting the salvaged gutters. She cut away deeply rusted ends and rejected sections with long splits. The remaining pieces were scrubbed clean and laid beside the barn. The family obtained several food-grade barrels from a local bakery. They had once held safe ingredients and could be washed thoroughly. Aliyah fitted each barrel with a tight lid. She covered the inlet with metal mesh to block leaves and large insects. The outlet sat several inches above the bottom so sediment could settle beneath it instead of entering the hose. The first runoff from the roof presented another problem. Dust, bird droppings, loose paint, and leaves could wash down during the opening minutes of a storm. Aliyah built a simple diverter so the earliest dirty water entered a separate container before the cleaner flow reached the storage barrel. The collected water would never be treated as automatically safe. No one would drink it. It would be used for watering soil, rinsing tools, and other farm tasks where potable water was unnecessary. The gutter itself needed a slight slope. Too flat, and water would sit in the middle. Too steep, and the flow could strike the joints hard enough to escape. Aliyah straightened old brackets and added wooden supports beneath the weaker sections. Daniel watched her measure the drop from one end of the roof to the other. "This looks simple from the ground," he said. "It looked simple from the ground to me too," she answered. By late afternoon, the first line stretched across one side of the barn. The pieces did not match. Some were faded silver. Others carried patches of old white paint. The downspout had been assembled from two different shapes of metal, but the lower end pointed toward a closed blue barrel. Aliyah stepped back and looked at the completed line. For the first time, water falling on that side of the roof had somewhere to go. Then the first rain arrived and showed her that the gutter had almost nowhere to take it. The first test was a gentle rain. Aliyah stood beside the barrel and waited for water to emerge from the downspout. Only a few drops appeared. She climbed the ladder after the rain weakened and found a long pool sitting in the middle of the gutter. One old bracket had bent under the weight. The metal sagged, creating a low point where water collected instead of flowing toward the barrel. Before Aliyah could repair it, the pool reached the edge and spilled down the barn wall. She added another support and adjusted the slope. The next shower moved water farther, but the joints began leaking. One connection released a steady stream onto the ground. Another twisted under the force of the flow and sent water over the side. Daniel watched from beneath the awning. "So far," he said, "the roof is still winning." Aliyah knew he was right. She removed nearly the entire line. On the ground, she cut the sections again and created longer overlaps between them. She positioned the joints so water moved over each seam instead of striking directly against it. Weak pieces were discarded. The rebuilt gutter was shorter, but more reliable. Then a different problem appeared inside the first barrel. Aliyah had left part of the lid open so she could monitor the water level. Several warm days later, small mosquito larvae moved near the surface. Her mother, Renee, saw them and immediately told her the barrel could not remain open. Aliyah emptied it away from the vegetable field, scrubbed the inside, and installed a sealed lid with a screened inlet. The next failure nearly damaged the barn. A stronger storm filled the barrel faster than Aliyah expected. Water reached the top, escaped around the lid, and poured down beside the foundation. The system had successfully collected rain. Now it was placing that rain exactly where the family did not want it. Aliyah learned that storage required a safe escape route. She installed an overflow pipe near the top of the barrel and directed it toward a shallow grass channel away from the building. A second barrel was connected to the first, so excess water could enter it before leaving the system. She raised both barrels on a low, stable wooden platform made from thick boards. The base had to remain level. A full barrel was too heavy to risk tipping. Aliyah also moved the outlet above the sediment line and added a simple cleanout point at the lowest part of the system. By the third rebuild, the gutter no longer looked like random scrap attached to a roof. It still looked old. But every piece now had a purpose. Aliyah decided not to expand it. One side of the barn was enough until a real storm proved the system could survive. Several mornings later, Daniel started the well pump. The motor ran. The hose coughed. Then air came through the line. The heat grew worse. Daniel lowered a weighted measuring line into the well and found that the water level had dropped again. The pump needed more time to recover after each use. If the family ran it too long, pressure disappeared. Watering was reduced. The strawberry rows received less than usual. Several late vegetable beds were left to survive on whatever moisture remained in the soil. The greenhouse could not be treated the same way. Young seedlings in shallow trays could die after one fully dry day. Aliyah's barrels were nearly empty. The last rains had been too brief to provide much storage. That was the weakness of the entire system. A gutter could redirect rain. A barrel could save it. Neither could make rain fall. Then a storm appeared in the forecast. It might cross directly over the farm. It might split around the county and leave the Stone property dry again. By evening, the sky turned dark to the west. Wind pushed warm air across the field. The scent of rain arrived before the first drop. Aliyah checked every lid, joint, screen, support, and overflow. Daniel remained beside her. He still did not trust the repaired gutters, but the well had left the family with few alternatives. The rain began suddenly. Water washed the first dust from the roof into the diversion container. After several minutes, Aliyah redirected the flow toward the main barrel. The sound inside it changed from scattered drops to a continuous rush. One joint leaked. Another held. Most of the water reached the downspout. The first barrel began filling. When the level reached the overflow connection, water entered the second barrel exactly as planned. Then leaves collected against the upper screen. The gutter backed up near the corner of the barn. Water rose toward the edge and began spilling over. Aliyah did not climb onto the wet roof. She used a long wooden handle from the ground to loosen the leaves and pull them away from the screen. The blocked water released all at once. It rushed down the pipe and struck the first barrel hard. The sides flexed. Aliyah aimed her flashlight at the overflow. For several seconds, almost nothing moved. Then water entered the second barrel. The pipe had held. Parts of the open vegetable field produced poorly. The stored rain could not cover every acre. But the seedlings in the greenhouse survived. So did the young tomatoes beside the packing shed. The broken gutters had not saved the entire farm. They had preserved the plants the family could not afford to restart. Over the following weeks, Aliyah kept records of every barrel the family used. She did not claim the system had replaced the well. It had not. The farm still depended on groundwater for most irrigation. During long dry periods, the barrels became empty and remained that way until another storm arrived. But after each useful rain, the family ran the pump less often. The collected water was used on seedlings, young plants, and small areas that could be watered by hand. Well water was reserved for crops that required more volume. That difference gave the pump more recovery time. It also reduced the number of occasions when air entered the line. Daniel inspected the gutter after another small rain. He pressed one leaking joint, checked the support beneath the sagging section, and followed the overflow pipe toward the grass channel. Then he looked at the unused side of the barn roof. "Do we have enough good gutter left for that side?" he asked. Aliyah considered the question. "We would need another barrel," she said, "and a larger overflow." Daniel nodded. "Then we find those first." That was his quiet recognition. He did not tell Aliyah she had been right. He began helping her improve the system. A neighboring farmer visited after seeing the barrels beside the barn. He did not ask Aliyah how to collect enough water for an entire field. He asked how she kept mosquitoes out. Aliyah showed him the tight lids, screened inlets, and sealed connections. She also explained the limitations. Water from a roof was not automatically clean. Roofing materials, bird waste, dust, and chemicals could contaminate runoff. The first dirty flow needed to be diverted. Storage barrels had to be closed and regularly inspected. The system needed a stable foundation. A full barrel could weigh hundreds of pounds. If it tipped, it could injure someone or damage the building. Overflow water had to move away from foundations and paths. Screens needed cleaning. Gutters required maintenance. In cold weather, parts of the system might need draining to prevent freezing damage. Most importantly, stored rainwater had to be used for appropriate purposes. The Stone family never treated it as drinking water. The following spring, they expanded the system only to the barn and greenhouse. They did not connect every building. They did not stop using the well. The barrels became a reserve for seedlings, transplants, and household farm tasks that did not require potable water. Months later, another short rain crossed the property. Aaliyah stood beneath the same barn awning and listened to drops striking the metal roof. Before the gutter system, that sound had meant temporary relief. The water would fall, gather in the yard, cut a muddy path beside the building, and disappear. Now it travelled through the repaired metal, crossed the screened inlet, and entered a closed barrel. The gutter was still dented. One joint still needed repair. The stored water would not last forever, but it would remain on the farm longer than the storm itself. Aaliyah had not discovered a new source of water. She had simply stopped allowing the old one to fall from the roof and leave unnoticed.